NASCAR is one of the most interesting and entertaining sports in the world. Maybe not so much for the content they deliver on a weekly basis, but rather for the deep rabbit hole that is its history and lore. Just the Cup Series alone has had hundreds of different drivers over its 75-year run and thousands of individuals working behind the scenes. So there are literal tons of stories and timelines that we will only be scratching the surface of in this video. Today we are going to be listing some useless but interesting facts about the sport of NASCAR, all in no particular order. This isn't an iceberg video and this isn't a top 10, it's just a list of stuff I know way too much about and I couldn't find a video to put it in. So you can use this info to, I don't know, get looked at weird at a party? Okay, so if you've been a NASCAR fan long enough, you've heard this story 1,000 times, but we can't talk weird facts without speaking of it. In 1933, America started the Prohibition, which banned the consumption and manufacturing of alcohol. This went about as well as you'd expect, thus ushering in the era of hooch, white lightning, Mountain Dew, moonshine, homemade illegal liquor. All across America, especially in the southeastern region, people were making, transporting, and selling illegal rot gut whiskey. And with transporting liquor comes with dealing with the law. Not wanting to be caught, people would take their cars, soup them up, and then on weekends when they had nothing to do, they would race them. Given some time, Prohibition would eventually end, and the bootleggers would become racers. Suddenly, there was an explosion of unsanctioned races across the Southeast. One of those bootleggers turned racers was Bill France, and him and his drunken buddies would get together in a hotel in Daytona and form the National Association of Stock Car Auto Racing. Speaking of NASCAR's early years, let's talk about the 1952 Grand National Champion Tim Flock, or rather his co-driver, Jocko Flocko, who was a monkey. During the 1953 season, Tim Flock would adopt a monkey to ride along with him during the races. The monkey would become the only co-driver in the sport's known history, and the only animal to ride along with someone to a win. Unfortunately though, in the Rally 300 on the same year, Jocko would slip out of his harness, open a hatch in the floorboard, and tragically fall out of Tim's number 91 Hudson Hornet, while it was traveling at high speeds, killing him instantly. Hi, so it's me after making this video. It is currently 12 a.m. and I am extremely tired. And apparently wherever I got my research from was dead wrong. Jocko Flocko did not die in the car. He was actually put down much later on for different reasons. Side note, there was a reference to Jocko in the Pixar film Cars 3. Did you know that Toyota wasn't the first foreign auto manufacturer in NASCAR? Jaguar and Porsche both ran in the Cup Series in the early 50s. In fact, Jaguar actually got its first and only win on June 13, 1953 at Linden Airport, making it the first manufacturer of foreign origin to win in a NASCAR race. Wait a second, Linden Airport? Yep, I said that correctly. NASCAR used to race in a bunch of crazy places, some of which weren't even racetracks at all. For example, the Daytona Beach course, obviously, an airport runway made into a road course as previously mentioned, Bowman Gray Stadium, which was and still is a high school football field, and Soldier Field in Chicago. You think the LA Coliseum in 2023 is crazy? Imagine racing on one of these. While today NASCAR's #1 priority is safety, many drivers back in the 50s used to race in these. This is NASCAR Hall of Famer Curtis Turner in his number 26 Ford Sunliner, competing in a race for the NASCAR convertible division. Not a lot is known, but NASCAR ran this series officially from 1956 through 59. But some of these cars were seen running in the Grand National and Modified Series all the way up until 1962. In fact, in the first annual Daytona 500 in 59, out of the 59 drivers that were running in the race, 20 of them were convertibles. But as the cars got faster, these ruthless hot rods were slowly drizzled out and never ran again, for obvious reasons. Going outside of the NASCAR Cup Series in North America, let's cross the pond and talk about our foreign cousin, the NASCAR Wheel and Euro Series. Hosting events anywhere from the UK to the Czech Republic, This series has been delivering the thrill of stock car racing across Europe since 2009. Our Latin neighbors down south have seen their fair share of stock car racing as well. The NASCAR Mexico Series, as it's simply called, is Mexico's premier stock car racing division. Some notable drivers to transfer from this series are Carlos Contreras and Daniel Suarez. Going out of my script here, but I really recommend checking one of these races out on YouTube if you get the chance. They always put on a good show. The Cup Series has done some international racing as well. In 1996 and 97, the Winston Cup Series held races on the world-renowned Suzuka circuit in Japan. The name the NASCAR Thunder Special Suzuka, although short-lived, is well remembered by many fans who grew up watching NASCAR in the 90s. The 96 race was won by Rusty Wallace and the 97 by Mike Skinner. Also in 1998, the Cup Series raced at Motegi? The Coca-Cola 500, also in Japan. This race was also won by Mike Skinner. And fun fact, Dale Jr. ran this race in the number 1 Coca-Cola Chevy, driving for his father's team. Obviously, the most important part of any NASCAR event are the cars. Sometimes they become a mere extension to the driver. Often to the point to when we see a certain make and model out on the road, we think of that specific person. Dodge, Richard Petty, Toyota Camry, Kyle Busch, Chevrolet Monte Carlo, Dale Earnhardt, and many others. Which is the perfect segue into our next bunch of facts. The Chevy Monte Carlo is the winningest model in NASCAR Cup Series history. Starting its run in 1971, the Chevy MC quickly became a dominant force in NASCAR. This model alone has acquired 24 manufacturer championships for Chevy, 24 driver championships, and a whopping grand total of 396 wins, all spanning across 7 generations of the model that made its way in and out between 71 through 2007. The 5th generation is special. The showroom version of the 2000 Monte Carlo was specifically designed with NASCAR in mind, mainly its body style. Compared to the 1999 model, the body was made longer and sleeker to make the car more aerodynamic. And with a stock car equivalent of this model, you know it was a monster out on the racetrack.
Motor Week viewers have frequently heard us use the phrase, win on Sunday, sell on Monday. Now that refers to car makers using racing success as a marketing tool. But despite the gigantic popularity of Winston Cup stock car racing, manufacturers have made little use of it in recent years. Or at least until this year. You see, Chevrolet has just released its 2000 Monte Carlo Coupe, a machine that bears more than a passing resemblance to its Winston Cup namesake.
And because of its massive success, Chevy released special editions of these cars based on some of its drivers. The most notable two being the Intimidator and the Dale Jr. edition. This, of course, isn't the first time NASCAR has influenced some of the designers up in Detroit. A notable example is the 1969 Dodge Charger Daytona and the Plymouth Superbird. 2 cars you could buy from the dealership that were made specifically for racing, each capable of reaching speeds up to 200 miles per hour. Another side note, these cars were banned from the NASCAR sanctioning body 2 years later. Since its first race in 1969, it has often been said that the famed Talladega Superspeedway is cursed. Centuries ago, Native Americans inhabited the Talladega, Alabama area. It's rumored that when they were forced to leave their territory and migrate west during the Trail of Tears, the Indians cursed the land. Many say that the track itself sits on the tribe's burial ground. Thus, the reason many fans and drivers alike claim that the track and the surrounding area is haunted. If you want to learn more about this, I recommend watching Imp Lemon's Talladega video. But I'll give some bits and facts surrounding the track and the curse while we're on the subject, because there is quite a bit to talk about. Starting with Bobby Isaac. In the 1973 Talladega 500, after a wreck that took the life of fellow driver Larry Smith, 1970 NASCAR champion, Bobby Isaac unexpectedly came down pit road, parked his car, and immediately, right there on pit road, claimed that he was done racing. Why? According to Bobby himself, he heard loud, audible voices while driving at speed that said, quote, "Get out of the car immediately or you will die." Of course, everyone was a bit shocked by this, but Bobby guaranteed that's what happened. Despite the claim though, in 1977, he would return to racing and would make a few starts. But during the Winston 200 at Hickory Motor Speedway, with 40 laps left, Bobby would pull out of the race. As he was exiting his car, he collapsed. He would later die in a hospital due to a heart attack. Another weird incident that happened, that's not creepy, came in 1982 when some yahoo conned his way into a Cup Series race.
Bodine is out of the draft. He's down on the inside lane all by himself. The black flag coming off one of the back markers as we pass the start-finish line this time. Bodine, look where he is positioned. Perhaps a little bit of inexperience on the young driver. Well, he's not that young, but inexperience in terms of his years in Grand National driving as we go back up front.
A man with the alias of L.W. Wright somehow tricked Space Age Marketing of Nashville and NASCAR that he was a veteran race car driver, gave actual veteran driver Sterling Marlin cash and a bounce check to buy a Monte Carlo stock car, made up a fake sponsorship with country singers Merle Haggard, T.G. Shepherd, and Waylon Jennings, and somehow actually got in and qualified for the race. Immediately after the green flag for the race was waved, it was apparent that Wright's number 34 Chevy was way off the pace. He was black flagged and ordered to park the car down pit road after only 13 laps. He would do as told, but would disappear and never be heard from again, leaving a trail of bounce checks and hurt feelings. Yeah, that's right, NASCAR has their own DB Cooper. Some say he's still at large, but supposedly L.W. Wright has identified himself recently and was actually arrested just earlier this year. But don't quote me on that. It could just be somebody posing or made up. Now, as a person who has been to Talladega in the past, I can confirm what everyone says. A race weekend at Talladega Superspeedway is a party. The infield may be the hot spot, but this overflows into the grandstands as well. Sometimes, some guy, usually a drunk, will do something so outlandishly stupid and hilarious that usually results in them being arrested. And at the 1986 Winston 500, one of those drunks would become the highlight of the race.
All right, thank you, Jack. Well, the pace car, we understand has been stolen. The officials are not driving this thing, and somebody has actually gotten to the pace car and stole it.
There are at least 2 policemen on motorcycles, plus this car, that are pursuing the pace car right now.
Darren Charles Crowder, a 20-year-old Alabama native, hopped in an unattended Pontiac Trans Am pace car and took it for a joyride. The man got it up to speeds exceeding 100 miles per hour and made 2 whole laps before being stopped by a police blockade. Just another Sunday at Talladega Superspeedway. Believe it or not, NASCAR was at one point the second most popular sport in America, runner-up to the NFL. But simultaneously, it was the country's largest spectator sport. During its peak in the late 90s and early 2000s, it was estimated that any given race could have up to 150,000 on-site spectators or more. While today, the NFL's largest arena, that being MetLife Stadium, currently has a seating capacity of 82,000. NASCAR reached its peak TV popularity in 2005, a couple years after a deal was made for NASCAR's largest contract at the time. In 2003, Nextel made a deal with NASCAR to replace its previous Cup Series sponsor, Winston. The total for the phone company to rebrand the sport's biggest division as the NASCAR Nextel Cup Series was $700 million. While STP may have been with Richard Petty's team off and on since 1972, the longest consecutive sponsorship with a racing team is Interstate Batteries with Joe Gibbs Racing. As of 2023, Interstate Batteries has been in a contract with JGR for 30 years. Some notable drivers to drive the Interstate Battery car is Dale Jarrett, Bobby Labonte, J.J. Yeley, and Kyle Busch. If you're a football fan, Joe Gibbs may sound familiar to you. That's because he's the same Joe Gibbs that coached the Washington Redskins. Between 1981 through 1992, he would lead the team to 3 Super Bowl titles. A little bit of info in case you ever wondered why Bobby Labonte had an NFL logo on his hood back in the day. Okay, so I'm running out of facts on my script, and all the rest of it is small stuff. So...
Lightning round.
While being highly illegal, many drivers, including Darrell Waltrip and A.J. Foyt, have been caught using nitrous oxide in their cars. The infamous nitrous scandal occurred in 1976, but I guarantee you they used it way before and way after that. Yeah, NASCAR was the Fast and Furious tuner culture before it was popular. NASCAR for the majority of its lifespan has used 8-cylinder engines. But between 1989 and 1984, the Busch Series ran V6s. Back in the day when a car's chassis could no longer be used, or was just taking up space, many team owners and drivers would bury their race cars. Richard Petty and Richard Childress have both admitted to doing this. The first ever green-white checkered finish took place at the inaugural 1995 NASCAR Super Truck race at Phoenix. And yeah, that's all I got. Quick apology to everyone who's subscribed to my channel. I know it took me forever to make another NASCAR video, but here it is. I hope you enjoyed, and if you want to see more stuff like this, like and subscribe, comment, give me a subject. I'm open to anything that has to do with cars turning left.